We told ourselves we weren't going to overreact, but goodness gracious, Deuce Knight made that very difficult.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes. Welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. And thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day on this live edition of Locked On Auburn, recapping Auburn's beatdown over Mercer 62-17 in a game where we all said we're not going to overreact. But what Deuce Knight did today, it was incredible. It was incredible. Setting the bar so high with that opening long 75-yard touchdown run. Then he would rush for 3 more touchdowns, 9 carries, 162 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. He also passed for 239 and 2 scores through the air as well, including an awesome 90-plus yard score to Malcolm Simmons. And then, of course, giving Cam Coleman a chance in the end zone. He did everything. He did everything we all wanted him to do, and it's going to be cloaked with and rightfully so, yeah, but against Mercer. But still, I'd rather him do it against Mercer than not do it at all. Because a lot of the argument for Deuce and his tremendously high ceiling are the physical traits. And we saw the physical traits today. He's got this off season to work out, the football stuff and, let the game progressing. I think there were a few of those times where he probably gets caught by edge rushers or the pocket collapses a little bit quicker. So the game's going to have to be a little bit faster against other teams next year when he's presumably the guy, whether it's next year or the year after. We'll see what happens with him and Ashton. But regardless, the traits were absolutely there. Absolutely there. And he gave guys a shot. I mean, Singleton didn't have that big of a game, but I mean, I'm kind of been calling for Malcolm Simmons to pop every single outing. It seems like him getting that big, massive touchdown was great. And then obviously, Cam Coleman just giving him a shot. I don't know why we don't do that every time we're like, first and goal from the 9 or 10. I don't know why we don't just throw it to Cam Coleman. The track record is unbelievable. The success rate is unbelievable. But all in all, like I don't know what else you from the offensive side of the ball. Like I don't know what else you could have really asked for. Scoring 62 points is obviously exciting. Yes, some of those points come from an Elijah Melendez pick 6, but still, all in all, if I told you, hey, the offense is going to be responsible for 50-ish points, and the majority of it's going to be Deuce Knight, with the exception of a long Jackson Arnold touchdown run at the end of the game, like we're all like, oh yeah, Deuce must have balled out. And he did. And I also love that Deuce Knight seemed to get better and more comfortable as a passer as the game went on. Those first few drives, like it looked a little like the passes looked a little wobbly, like there's a little bit of air under them. But as the game went on, you could tell he started to get more comfortable. And you got to get a little more accurate. There's a little more zip on the ball over the course of the game. And I think that's awesome. I saw enough from Deuce to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, this all makes sense. But once again, it's going to be, it's against Mercer. And I know a lot of the Auburn fan base is like, yeah, Mercer's 9-1 going into this, and they're really good. And DJ Durkin talked them up at his presser. Like, it's still just a level of competition. It's not the same. However, Mercer's quarterback is a dude. That guy will be playing D1 next year for someone, or he should. Someone should portal him immediately. But I said Deuce couldn't prove that he was the guy in this game. And I think I'm okay being wrong on that. I did say he could prove that he wasn't the guy, and clearly that's not what happened today. But the way he moved, I mean, going back to the physical traits, like we all knew he was fast. But like on those first 2 touchdown runs that were kind of, that were the longer runs of the day, it just doesn't look like, if you look at just him, it doesn't look like he's running that fast. But then he like separates from everyone else. And it's like, man, he is absolutely moving. Awesome stuff. Good job, Deuce. Good job, Deuce. Jeremiah Cobb, they had him under control, 12 carries for 32 yards, which is kind of interesting. Jones, 6 carries for 35. He had a 20-yarder, which was nice. I hadn't heard anything about Omar Mabson, so I'm curious to see if that's asked or discussed with DJ Durkin. So we'll talk about that with Daryl tomorrow morning, I'm sure. But while we're talking about quarterbacks, before we get to the negative side of the defense, which I do think is worth talking about, I've never, like I've said this before, like I've never seen a staff and a program treat their quarterback like we've treated Jackson Arnold this year. As far as, okay, Deuce is dealing, it seems like they're wanting to keep him in either for reps or if you wanted to let him like have a shot at a few records, which I'm sure he broke a few records today. But to put Jackson in for a drive, he takes a sack. You have to punt for the first time in several drives, and then you put Deuce back in. Like, I don't understand why we're still doing this. I don't understand why we're still doing this. And then he gets in and has his last touchdown run. I assume that'll be his last touchdown as an Auburn Tiger. Good for Jackson. What a great way for him to go out. But I do think I do think that that's kind of an interesting way to handle all of that. But whatever. Doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But I did think that was interesting in real time. All that being said, Deuce Knight was incredible. Deuce Knight was incredible. And there's going to be people say, like, yeah, he's against Mercer. Well, look, he's only been asked to start against Mercer. The other thing, and we talked about this when we were live on the Barncast, but I kind of harped on the coaching staff, or I guess the previous regime, well, when Hugh Freeze was here, that when they put Deuce in against Ball State, there were people talking negatively about Deuce because he didn't look good against Ball State, which Ball is not a state. Quick reminder. But he was put in with all the other backups. I'm like, that's just so not fair. Like, that's just so like not setting Deuce up to succeed. And granted, there's a chance that he had development from then to now. There's also a chance that the offensive game plan today was better than it was against Ball State because Hugh Freeze is gone. All of that. But still, like, I don't think if you're ushering a quarterback along to be your future, you got to put him in with the starters. And I think today is a good example of that. But all in all, very excited to see what Deuce Knight can do for the future of this program because, man, that was exciting. That was exciting. Malcolm Simmons, 5 catches for 149 and a touchdown. Cam Coleman, 5 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown. Singleton, 4 catches for just 27 yards. Perry had an 11-yard catch. Cobb had a 10-yard catch. I think that one was from Jackson. Preston Howard caught a pass. And then Jones had a 3-yard catch. So all in all, solid day for the offense, which begs the question, like, man, do you score this much if Hugh Freeze is still your head coach? And the answer to that is probably not. So I just don't fully get it. I don't fully get it. All right, so that's the good. The offense was great. Very, very pleased with the offense. Once again, yes, it's Mercer. I don't care. There are some questions on the defense, and Auburn is going to be down a key contributor for the first half of the Iron Bowl. That's a little concerning. All that is next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. And thank you to Game Time. Thank you to Game Time for sponsoring today's show. Obviously, college football close to wrapping up, but you've got one more chance to see the Auburn Tigers. And look, I feel good about their chances. I feel good about their chances to make some chaos next week. You want to be there. You want to be there during Hare Stadium. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be expensive to get in there. But the best cost-effective way to go to the Iron Bowl is to get tickets through Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. We've mentioned this last week, but the line for the Iron Bowl, all last week, it sat at 5.5. I'm trying to see if it moved at all today. I'm guessing it didn't. They took it down temporarily. Interesting. So we'll keep you posted on that. But regardless, if you think Auburn's going to win, Auburn money line is going to be juicy. I'm telling you that right now. New customers for FanDuel, you can get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Tough start for the defense. And how much of that should be concerning and how much of that should be, oh, well, they just are playing down to the level of competition, or they were all focused on Alabama this week, whatever. If it's the latter, great. If they're truly just focused on Alabama, fantastic. I do think there's an element of this where if you are a passing offense, which I'm saying this in this way because Alabama is a passing offense, it's become pretty clear that if you are attacking Auburn's secondary, there's two guys you got to go after. We've seen it fairly consistently. And if Mercer can do it, you got to assume Ty Simpson and Alabama can do it next week. And that is Kayin Lee and Caleb Harris. And I'm so stoked that Caleb Harris got a pick today. I'm so stoked that hopefully that gives him that confidence boost because he's been picked on by opposing offenses this year. Kayin Lee, I don't know what's going on there. People are wanting to lump the entire secondary together. I'm like, I don't know. Like Eric Winters has been solid. Y'all know my opinion on Jay Crawford. I think he's one of the few irreplaceable players on this Auburn roster. It's like, I don't think it only takes one missed assignment to make the entire secondary look bad. And you're seeing Kayin Lee get beat and you're seeing Caleb Harris get beat. And that got better over the course of the game. And honestly, like we're super fortunate that a few of those plays where they did get beat, that the Mercer receivers, like it was a beautifully thrown ball. Mercer's quarterback is a dude. That guy is a baller. He should not be at Mercer. He should be starting for a D1 program. He is solid. But all that to say, like, thank goodness they didn't make the tough catches because the ball placement was perfect against 4 and against 8. And so that's something where if you're DJ Durkin, like you've seen this all year, so clearly you've made the decision in either in your brain or in meeting rooms that those are still the best guys to give you the chance to win. But you also have to ask the question, especially if we're assuming that a lot of this defensive staff is going to stay, or at least DJ Durkin's going to stay, you've got to ask the question like, okay, why were these guys good last year? Caleb Harris was really good last year. Like, why is he taking a step back? And why was Kayin Lee better as a freshman than he is now? And like, you've got to ask those questions because like I've seen some stuff like, okay, Auburn's defensive secondary is like not gotten better this year. I'm like, well, that's not entirely fair. Like you're telling me Fagans hasn't gotten better, or Winters hasn't gotten better, or Sylvester Smith hasn't gotten better, or Jay Crawford hasn't gotten better. I'm like, I think that's a little unfair to those guys who I think have been pretty solid fairly consistently. But it only takes one. It's like an offensive line. Like if you've got one weak link that's consistently missing, it's noticeable. I mean, boy, have we seen that throughout this year. So it's a unit. And if you play against a quarterback or an offensive coaching staff that's able to call it against those guys, or a quarterback that can progress to all of those and kind of pick on the weak link, that's what we see. And that's important because Ty Simpson can do that next week. So that's going to be interesting to see. Sylvester Smith, a totally unnecessary targeting call in the second half there, which obviously him missing the second half against Mercer, not a big deal. Him missing the first half against Alabama, that stinks. That stinks. So I'm curious to see what exactly that is going to look like from a rotation standpoint. So you got to think, Caleb Harris, Fagans, Winters, you got a feeling those guys are going to be there. Do you stick with that 3-corner look, and kind of keep Pleasant on the field to put more guys in at safety? They've got options, but you want to kind of be playing with a full deck when Alabama comes to town for a night game at Jordan-Hare Stadium next week. So I'm not as concerned about the defense as others. I really think, just culturally, this team plays down to plays to the level of their opponents. We've seen that this year. I mean, that's why they've been able to shut down A&M and Oklahoma and these Arkansas. I mean, these teams that have good offenses, they've been able to shut them down. So I'm not too concerned about that. If you want to cite Vandy, I'm fine with that. I'm not going to push back a ton, but I just got a feeling that over the bye week and even last week, their brain was on Alabama and what they can achieve. So that's where I'm at. We'll see what happens against Alabama next week. But all in all, I mean, this game was about what Deuce Knight did. This game was about Deuce Knight. That's what the discussion was going into it. Was, okay, Auburn can't really prove anything, but maybe Deuce Knight can. And I think Deuce Knight did exactly that. I was blown away by all of it. So hats off to him. Hats off to him. If you guys want to drop a few questions in the chat, I will take a stab at them. It's moving pretty quick, but I'll try to grab a few. Wanted to talk briefly. Elijah Melendez, we've now seen him have 2 interceptions and also have 2 pretty solid returns with them. He's the only reason Auburn scored any points against Kentucky a few weeks ago. And then for him to get the pick 6, like I think that's awesome. I think that's super, super great. So I also love it because Elijah Melendez was kind of tabbed as this like thumper, this like really big linebacker who's going to like be able to help you in the running game. And he's got 2 picks. So there you go. J-Dub asks, where's Daryl? This question happens every week. Daryl does not do the post game. He does the Sunday morning show. That has been that way all season with 1 week left to go. Do you think Deuce will see the field any versus Alabama? I do not. And I kind of hope, personally, I hope that he doesn't, because Ashton is a mobile quarterback. I'm anti like packages for backup quarterbacks that are mobile or wildcat packages. Like I'm just kind of against that if you have a mobile quarterback. And like that was the discussion going into the season with Ashton when we thought Jackson was going to be good and be the starter all year. It's like, do you have packages for Ashton? I'm like, I hope not, because Jackson can run. We even saw that today, that Jackson can run. That wasn't the issue. So I kind of hope not. Let's see. Yeah, we're not going to talk about Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin's going to LSU. There you go. I think Lane Kiffin's going to LSU. Guys, I mean, it just begs the question when you look at this offense. Like, what was Hugh Freeze doing? I mean, what was he doing? It just looks like it has life again. And you're doing with backups, and like I know it's Mercer, but it's still just I feel like even against some of the lesser teams like Ball State, like South Alabama, where it was just like, okay, we're still making this look way more difficult than we needed it to. So I don't I have a hard time fully understanding like what was Hugh Freeze doing. It's unbelievable. All right. Have I heard anything on Falk? I have not. I'm assuming that'll be discussed at the presser that Daryl's at right now. And so once that's done, we'll record, and that update will be dropped tomorrow morning. Zach, that's a good question about Keldrick Falk. There were a few guys that kind of got banged up. Like Jeremiah Cobb looked like he got hurt, and then he came back in, which I thought was a little interesting. I don't know if that's really worth it. I also, who else left? Zacchaeus Walker looks like he got banged up and left. I mean, he walked off on his own power, so I don't think it's a huge deal, but kind of got banged up against Mercer, which is a little interesting. All right, how bad is it to lose Sylvester Smith for the Iron Bowl? It's just the first half, but yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it a second ago. Like, I don't think it's great. You want to have a full deck, whenever you go up against anybody in a big game. So, yeah, I think so. He also seems to be in the right place. Like, does he always like make the tackle or whatever? I mean, nobody's 100% in that situation, but he's a guy you want on the field in the Iron Bowl for sure. J-Dub, there's no way Arnold looked better in practice than Knight. I don't know how we can know that. I mean, you're not allowed to like let the quarterback really scramble. Like you don't really get that emphasis in practice because quarterbacks aren't live. So he might have. I'm not sure. And a big chunk of the season, I think Deuce was like the third guy. And so I don't really know how much of a chance he really got. But man, looking at it today, like I don't think Jackson would have been able to do what he did. Goal line takes. Zach with a K. Z-A-C. Zach. If we win the Iron Bowl, how are you feeling about the coaching situation? I like the alarm thing, the alarm emoji you put there. I don't think it changes anything. I think Auburn has who they want in their crosshairs. And I think you're going to see a planned behind the scenes, like a planned rollout of announcements and all that, regardless of the outcome of the Iron Bowl. Like, I don't think there's a scenario where DJ Durkin like is the head coach next year, which I'm assuming is like what you were asking with that question. Totally unrelated. Top Shelf Gaming says Tulane is looking good today. LOL. There you go. Do you think Deuce will be the backup for the Iron Bowl? Yes. Sure. Yeah, I think so. Cool. Awesome. Good questions, guys. Good questions. We've tried that a few times and the chat was too crazy. So a little slower today because it's Mercer, which is fun. Guys, please like the video. Please subscribe. And we'll chat again in the morning. Daryl Dappert will be joining me for the folks asking. Daryl's every Sunday morning. Daryl Dappert. The GOAT. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.